Hey everybody, my name is Michael Anderle. I'm the CEO and president of LMBPN Publishing. I've been asked and honored by Ali to talk about business models and an advanced business model, which I will do. A little bit of a background about myself. I put out 3 books in November of 2015 called The Cartherian Gambit and continued moving forward in that series, and it became a best-selling series. And from there, we were able to do collaborations in the universe, and we've done multiple different ways and styles of doing publishing since then. We have over 400 titles right now on Amazon itself. We have over 150 audiobook titles, and we're on track to do 300 to 400 new titles in 2019 as well. I created the 20 Books to 50K group in 2016, and that particular group has a little over 28,000 members at the moment, which is totally focused strictly on business. It has nothing to do with how to write better or any other subjects whatsoever. So one of the things that I think that I can speak to is because as a publisher, which has been my focus ever since I was the only writer for LMBPN, we do try different business models. And I'd like to discuss not only what is a business model in the context of this discussion right now, but also what are some of the different business models that most people understand and realize what's going on with indie publishing. So specifically, what is a business model? And it's comprised of 4 parts. The first one is, what is your revenue source? And for us, that actually comes down to a little bit of a different clarification, of which I'll get into in a minute. But who's going to pay you and how are you going to get paid? Who is your customer base? For us, that's going to be what are the genres you're writing your books for, and that helps narrow it. And then you might have a better understanding. For instance, if you say, who is your customer base, and you write horror, well, typically it's going to be those that like Stephen King or other famous authors who have written in the horror genre. Would allow you to at least narrow your customer base down. If you happen to say that your customer base is anyone who reads, you probably don't have an easy road to hoe from there. The third part is, what are your products? And generally speaking, we consider our products our stories, right? But it can be more than that. It can certainly be your stories, but then you have different methods of getting your story out, which both include paperback, ebook, and audio. And audio, of course, has a bigger and different cost structure, which brings us into the next one, which is financing. So a business model is comprised of these 4 parts. And for financing, if you're just starting out, that could be anything from bootstrapping, to where you're just writing on a laptop that you've borrowed from work, and you're trying to get the best thing out, to you've used some credit cards or some savings in order to get the right editing or a much better cover. I typically cannot do, I did my first covers myself for $20. And then I hired somebody as soon as I had income from the books in order to be able to push it forward. I wouldn't suggest doing that now, because I know a lot more than I did at the time, and I know that I can get some decent covers for $60 if I go out there to the pre-made areas. So within those 4 items, what are some of the types or business models for indie authors and indie publishers? Well, let's talk now a little bit about that wide versus exclusive model situation. And this has to do back with the business model and your revenue source. If you're wide, you are pushing out your stories or your audiobooks or merchandise to most places that you can. For example, you would be out on Amazon, you would be out on Kobo, you'd be out on Apple, you might be out on Smashwords, you might use Draft to Digital in order to push yourself down to, secondary, tertiary location distributors, publishers. Well, you're the publisher, but distributors, in order to get into every nook and cranny that you can around the world. And so that would be a wide model. But if you're in Kindle Unlimited, Amazon limits you to only publishing your ebooks on Amazon itself. You can use your paperbacks and go to Ingram Spark or anywhere else. So within that, if you're not exclusive, Amazon only, then you're wide. If you're Amazon only, then you deal with about 11 different income payment statements each month, and that comes from the different geographical areas of Amazon itself. And then if you're wide, of course, you're going to get them from all the different companies, and your complexity goes way up. Let's talk about the difference between an IP creator and a publisher. If you're writing your own stories, you are the IP creator. You're the product creator. And if you're a publisher, you're acquiring the rights to publish the stories. And there are hybrids with this all over the place. We're a hybrid at LMBPN. I create IP, but I also have, upon occasion, worked with others to acquire IP usually with myself adding modifications to it in order to make it more probably easier to sell to my target audience, let's say. But it is something that we're looking at, is to actually be a more traditional publisher going into the future. We also have things like audio rights. Are you an audio publisher or are you an audio rights seller? And this goes back, revenue source. If you're going to be an audio publisher, we've published about 150 books, like I said. These books cost anywhere from $2,000 to $3,500, $4,000 typically each book. And so while we do get to keep the 40% revenue split with Audible if we're exclusive to them, or 25% if we go wide, there's a lot of money up front. If you're an audio rights seller, on the other hand, then you are selling the rights to your ebook in order to acquire income, and the other business, whether it be a Tantor or a Podium Publishing or Blackstone Audio or any of the others that actually acquire audio rights. And we actually have acquired audio rights ourselves in the past for collaborators with the company. So you then have a business model where you have an IP creator / partner. And I can think of one in particular who writes an urban fantasy. The author loves to write the story, but she doesn't like to do the world building. And so she has a partner that does the world building for the series that she does, and then she'll write the stories within that world, and then they split the profits. So that is one business model and revenue stream for creating profits. And then you have an IP creator and then a work for hire. What this is there are people, even as myself, who will be able to create collaborative opportunities, but the writer doesn't want to take the risk of what comes next. With 70, 80, 90,000 or more books coming out each month, it is easier for some work for hire authors to go through and just write the book and say, okay, here's the book, but now you need to pay me. And then they will allow all risk to the IP creator. And so that is one way that it is done. But then you also have splits and hybrids from that, where you have a work for hire but a small percentage of income, or you have straight up collaboration, which is what we're best known for, where the collaborator retains 50% of the income. We handle all the cost for the editing, most of the cost for the covers, and the marketing as well. And so there are just different methods to do the business models within the indie author, indie publisher arena. Now you need to be really careful if either you're delivering a legal document or you're signing a legal document. Pay a close attention to what those things say. Now there's one here in the United States, you can get a legal document out of a book. And if so, that legal document is going to be perhaps weighted toward whoever the entity was that wanted the legal document created. If it was someone like an author, then the legal document might be weighted toward their favor. If it was a publisher, the legal document might be weighted in their favor. And every legal document is negotiable. Don't assume that if you're given something that you have to accept it as is. Go through it. Have someone look at it with you. Make sure that it matches up with what you think you heard. And so those are all just different aspects of the business model. We have acquisition of rights, which is the traditional method of acquiring IP that we know from the trad pubs, as we would call them. And so you're working with an author and they bring something to you, you review it, you like it, you agree on what the percentage cuts are going to be, who's going to pay what, how is the marketing going to be done, and then you push forward with it. And then also, I'd like to consider the, pop culture merchandise. So shirts or other items that are done for your characters in your IP is another revenue source. So I'm going to move on here a little bit. Wide audio versus Audible exclusive. So, there's a situation just like there is on the Amazon versus, exclusivity versus wide, and that's Audible. Audible presently holds 40% if you go exclusive with them, and then they have 25% if you go wide. There's a lot of information out there, and I would suggest everyone take a look and see whether or not it is worth giving up that 15% extra to go wide because of the new ways that Audible is being distributed around the world. And then also you can do advertising on your content, which is a little bit new. And what we've been doing, testing the waters, if you will, is looking at doing YouTube videos for your Audible type of content. If you can either do the audio yourself or you have someone in your family, and then run ads on it. And it not only helps you from doing typically an income stream, minor admittedly, but also from a marketing perspective. And look at seeing what those opportunities give you. So that's, another little item, not exactly what I wanted to talk in this video, but something for you to take a look at. So new business models. Let me talk about the collaboration business model, and basically to give you to understand some of the gotchas. Collaborations are multiple styles. They can be everywhere from you're collaborating with somebody else who owns all of the IP to you own all of the IP and someone else is collaborating with you inside your universe. So let's talk about why do it? Why do a collaboration? One of them could be that you have no platform. Okay, so what is a platform? I was really confused when I started this industry with all of the jargon that was pushed around, and platform, even probably to this day, is one of the ones that I'm confused about the most. But in general, a platform is a way for you to get the word out to fans about your new stories so that they will read them, buy them, and pass them along to others and get excited about them. It helps you with discoverability, which for me, 2019 is the term that LMBPN is using, discoverability. How do people find us? We think sometimes that we've saturated the market, and the reality is we've barely touched it. Craig Martell has a situation where he often talks about J.K. Rowling and seeing ads for Harry Potter, and yet we know that there have been, 6 movies or something, 7 movies of Harry Potter. There are, different places where you can go and enjoy yourself, like a Harry Potter similar to Disney. And we're like, if they need to do advertising, you probably need to do advertising just a whole lot more. So you don't have to do something you don't like to or you're not good at. And in collaboration, similar to what I talked about before with the IP, you have the ability to understand what it is that you like doing, and you bring a lot of fun. And that could be, for instance, I know one individual who doesn't like to write the first pass of a story. Oh, they might like and enjoy putting another, 30,000 words into an existing story. So if you have someone, collaboration where they enjoy writing the first pass and you enjoy coming back and doing the editing pass and adding to it, it's a good reason to do collaboration. Invited and better income. So another reason on collaboration is, first, you've been invited to be brought in, and you know that their series is selling better. So you're looking at it, once again, discoverability. You're going to be in a universe that sells better, and while your cut will be less, the goal is that your cut will be less of a much larger amount. And there's opportunity. There might be an opportunity because you're going to be in it 2 or 3 years. And in this case, what I'm talking about is the actual stories themselves. So you might be in and out of the collaboration and stay friends, and it took you 3 or 4 months to do it, but your books are now part of that universe for years. And so people who come into the universe, because that universe should still be marketed, no different than Arthurian Gambit is, but they find your books, and because they have, now they start tracking down to go find out more that you've written. Once again, discoverability. Another reason to do collaborations is just fun. A lot of times when we write, it's lonely. We're sitting there, we're banging our heads against the keyboards, and we're looking to see what we can do. And then now that you've got a group of people all focused on creating stories within a milieu, in a universe, you enjoy it. You're creating something new. There's somebody else that has energy and excitement and creativity, all with the same thing you're focused on. So that takes me to the next step, which join a group of like-minded people and then build something bigger than yourselves. If I had strictly been writing on Arthurian Gambit, for example, I would have had 21 books, which I think was basically this time last year. And let's say that at my fastest, I would have had another 8 books out. But that's not true. Arthurian Gambit has way more books than I could ever have possibly put out myself, satisfying the fans, which is really kind of the important part, and then also more products to sell, business model situation. I would rather have a smaller percentage of more books out than more books and not, in all of the percentage. And that's personal. A lot of these are just opinions of what I personally like. I do know authors who only want to put their own books out. They're happy with their speed, which I'm pleased that they are, and they only, want to worry about themselves. That's a very common business model, but not part of this discussion right now. All right, have others help you build something larger than you personally can, Kurthian Gambit. Help others with a leg up using your IP. I put this in here because it's important to me. I wanted to find out if I could help other authors from the success of Kurthian Gambit attain something for themselves. And I can look now into the past and say, yes, I did. I've helped multiple authors acquire discoverability for their own books, be able to quit their own jobs, and go full-time in author using collaborations and IP. There are challenges with doing this, many of them, and I'll speak to some of them right now. So in collaborations, one of the biggest ones you're going to have is talking about who wins an IP or creative discussion. Guaranteed, almost all of us at some times will disagree with our partner on where something should go creatively. If you're an individual that must own the rights, must have the final say, explain that up front to your collaborators. They need to be aware of this and have to accept this. Don't let it be something that creeps up on you when you're halfway through the collaboration design of the beats for, say, 4 books. Or if you're an individual that says, hey, I can take direction, and you can't because you need it your way, don't do a collaboration. They're not for everybody. And just recognize that and be okay with it. So once again, collaborations, if someone else has sold more books than you and you're asking to write in their universe, you need to realize that there's a reason they've sold those books. And if people are rereading those books, then there's a reason that the fans are liking it. If you can't understand what that reason is, don't go into that collaboration agreement thinking you're going to change someone who is successful. You need to learn what they are doing and meld it into your situation. So just be aware that for myself, some of the biggest issues with collaborations has been with what I would call overly picky individuals. And our structure of what we create together didn't mesh very well, and it created issues personally because it's stressful. I tend to be a very get along type of person, and if I meet someone who is very adamant about something, it stresses me out. So I prefer not to do that anymore. Just understand what your personality is and how it works. Then you're going to have income, and the spouses of those that you're collaborating with might have a word here as well. I've had a couple of collaborators very early when we were doing they were doing very well, and their spouses are questioning why would the person that in this case, these 2 guys, why would I pay them? Their spouses just didn't understand why that would happen. And so you have to have some agreements, some assurances of how they're going to get paid, when they're going to get paid, and these are all part of the legal documents that I talked about before. So having that as a basis, I want to talk about the more advanced one that we're working on right now at LMBPN, something I'm calling distributed collaboration. First, with collaborations, there are issues. I spoke to the emotional ones, really hard to outsource that. Not impossible, but difficult. But the biggest one are the payments and the paying everybody on time. I can tell you, for example, with LMBPN, we promised to pay within 5 business days of Amazon, particularly Amazon, paying us. And we've had to build massive spreadsheets so that we can actually figure out how to pay everybody and get the percentages right so that I can then pay them. And we typically pay within 48 hours of us getting paid. Depending on whether it's actually weekends or not. I mean, there's only so much you can do with the banks. So, but we have 5 days to get it there if something should dramatically go wrong. The challenge is once you go past a certain amount of books, and let's talk about wide versus exclusive. for the most part, we are exclusive with Amazon on collaborations where we owe people percentages, which means we have one spreadsheet that we have to deal with, a large spreadsheet. And then we have to deal with multiple currencies. So you have to figure out what's the currency evaluation, or the currency to dollars, to US dollars, so that we can do the transfers and we can figure out how to pay everybody. And then for myself, I have to go through either, I use Wells Fargo, so I do direct deposits for a big chunk of them. I have to do it whether it's business or is it a personal, and then I have to go through PayPal for the rest. I have, some of my collaborators use Payoneer because they're obviously overseas, and so they have to deal with, if I do direct deposit, they have to figure out what's going on in that situation. So now you have this massive issue with transferring. We made 500 Australian dollars, and we have to transfer that into US dollars, which is probably somewhere around 375 or something. And then we have to break it back apart, and then we have to get into banks that actually go back over to Australia, and they will then switch it back over to Australian dollars. Sometimes it's PayPal, sometimes it's through a Payoneer account, sometimes they have acquired a US bank, of which I have no idea how that happens. The next one are the legal documents. So with collaborations, you have legal documents, the rights and subrights. And here the subrights I'm talking about include, what about your audio rights? What about your Zimbabwe radio rights? What do the legal documents say about that? I can tell you that from our perspective, the way we do it is, once we set up an agreement on percentages, and we'll do the simple 50-50 split, that if I have the ability to sell the rights, let's say into French, then they acquire, once we take out the percentage for the agent in order to sell it, once I have an amount, they have an amount. If it is 50-50, it's the same amount. They get the same amount I do. I set up the legal documents where I don't have to ask permission to sell it into French, but once I accomplish that, they get their money into their account on the same timeline as what we do before, which is 5 days upon us receiving the payment itself. But think about the wide versus exclusive issue again. In Amazon, you're going to have the 9 to 11, I do not remember the exact number, payments that come in. If you go wide, now you're going to have Apple's payments and Kobo's payments and everybody else. You've just caused your headaches to multiply a lot. And so be considerate of that. And we were ourselves with our distributed collaboration concept. And I'll show you how we quote unquote fixed it in a minute. Other issues with collaborations, and specifically distributed collaborations, are going to be issues with canon. How do you fix issues with canon? One of the things that we encountered with Arthurian Gambit were people who wanted to read didn't want to read the books necessary to understand the canon for our stories. So they, for instance, if we had 25 books to read, they would read about 2 books and then start writing. You can't know the canon of the stories in 2 books. And so we had situations where people would get it wrong. So what kind of backstop measures do you have in place to make sure that the canon is correct? Now, you as an author can start reading them all. That is certainly one way that is done. Ourselves, I don't even get canon right for my own books at times, much less everybody else's books. So we've created what we call, or I created a JI team, just-in-time team, to catch if our editors fail to catch something, or canon issues if the editors fail to catch it. And it's one more way to put out a quality book. I would suggest a canon team. If you have and locate one person who has the personality to understand all the nuances of books, hide them first, give them all of your books, and let them read them, and they'll tell you what the canon issues are. You have an option with distributed collaboration with a possible not canon sticker. And I think, let me take a second. I don't think I explained exactly what I meant by distributed collaboration. So a few, maybe half a year ago, Amazon had what they called Kindle Worlds. And so Amazon held the IP. An author could go and write in Kindle Worlds, and you didn't necessarily have to bug the original author. Let's presume that I had done it, which I did not, but let's assume that I had. Then you could have written in Arthurian Gambit through Kindle Worlds, and Kindle Worlds would have handled everything based on the agreement that you made with them. that faltered, that failed. And there is a company, Draft2Digital, that created a new product called Draft2Digital Universes, of which this whole distributed collaboration is based on. It is the ability to move some of the responsibilities of collaboration from LMBPN over to Draft2Digital. Draft2Digital will acquire a 10% take in this, so we get our percentages after, but they're responsible for many of the problems that I'm discussing here. So going back to my little list of things that I wanted to talk about, if you have, one thing that we're playing with is allowing something that is similar to Fans Write for the Fans, which is a product line that we created. But that product line is canon, meaning that the readers and everything else are fans, and they don't allow anything in the Fans Write for the Fans that is outside of canon. There was some concern on my side because you can go to something like fanfiction.net, or is it, yeah, .net, and someone can write anything they want to, and pretty much companies don't sue there because it's fan fiction, there's no money involved, and so they allow it to go on. I wanted to say, well, what if a fan wants to do this fan fiction? They didn't want it to be canon because maybe they wanted Batman to be involved, and which, well, they can't do that because it's a money situation, so DC would be involved. But let's say that they wanted to put something in that's not part of canon, that doesn't also cause a legal issue with another company. I thought about putting like a non-canon sticker on the book and requiring it. I don't know that we're going to do that at the time, because fans typically are pushing back on that, but it's something I wanted to bring up to say it's something that we've considered. It brings up in this distributed collaboration an issue specifically when someone is taking a story down a dark road or a way that you don't want to be represented with your IP. So if you allow that, you now have stories out there that are associated with you that you don't want associated. So you need a way to stop this. And one way to do it, the Draft2Digital universes, what they do is when, and if you don't know who Draft2Digital is, I'm going to have another video where I talk with these guys and let them actually speak to them yourself. So I'm trying to save some of these answers for the end of this video. So what happens in a nutshell is you have to sign up with Draft2Digital, and you have to be approved by the universe owner, in this example me, in order to be able to publish. And I will be discussing with Draft2Digital saying, hey, any book that's going to go through our Zoo universe for the Draft2Digital universe, they have to be approved. If they aren't, well then you don't get published on Draft2Digital. Just that simple. And one of the requirements that I did not think of myself, this concern, it was actually a person in Adelaide, Australia that brought it to my attention at a 20 Books event there, was that what if someone took a wicked twist and they put some sort of character I didn't want in the universe? I didn't think about it because I thought, who would do that? And then I realized she was right. We have to be careful on what kind of characters come into our IP. And so be aware of it yourself. And then finally, advertising email list. You'll need to be creating some sort of marketing for the collaborative universe itself so that people who write in it, you can help push them. This is one way that Amazon Worlds, I don't think, worked very well. You know, they didn't really push all that well the different things that was going on, and they didn't tell people about it. So our version of a distributed collaborative universe was something that I call the Zoo, or the Zoo universe, and the Zoo is actually short for kudzu. And one of the issues with collaborations is what happens when somebody creates canon that somebody else doesn't follow. And so in the Zoo universe, there are alien flora, alien fauna, and I specifically architected it such that if author A comes in and they build some sort of creature, and then author B, who's writing in approximately the same timeline, doesn't use it, why not? Why don't we see this? And so it was designed such that the zoo itself doesn't care what animals or creatures live and survive, it's constantly creating new ones. And so we have a logical reason that says if a particular alien dies, alien monster, then you might not ever see it in any other book. Even if it's successful, but the humans kill it, it doesn't mean that the zoo is going to create it again. It might be on to the next thing. So you have to be aware of what's going on. I built zoo so that it had 7 different little cities around it. And so that if someone is in, let's say, the US side, they might never meet somebody who is in the encampment that includes the French and the Israelis, for example, or the Chinese, or the Russians, or, any of the 7. And so we built them large enough that you don't have to hit each other. They're inside the zoo. You need to consider your author pitch for this distributed collaboration and consider it potentially months ahead of time. Who will be writing, and make sure they have the areas that they need to be able to call their own. This kind of goes back to the issue of collaborations when you have creative dissonance between you guys. You're going to need to understand and explain to them what are the constraints that they must write within. What are the ramifications if they choose to color outside your lines, and what happens to them? And the answer can be your book doesn't come in. Now, they might be able to reuse their book and pull out all of the particular IP items that make it unique to your universe and do it more generically, or they might just have to can it. But you'll need to be able to say, this cannot go in. I told you about this. This is how it works, and this is what needs to go on. And as an author, I know that a lot of us like to get along. We're somewhat introverts. We want the next best thing for the next person, and it's hard for us, some of us not so much, but for some of us, it's hard for us to push back and say, you can't do this. I'm sorry. If you care to do this advanced business model, you're going to need to. Or you can partner with someone that can do it. It might be your spouse, it might be another business partner, whatever it takes. Your collaborative universe needs to be whole, not only for yourself, but for all of the other players in it. I hope that makes sense. You need to be able to push adherence to dates and adherence to quality. Both of those things are important. I messed up a fair amount in the beginning of my collaborative universe efforts because I felt, hey, these individuals are writing. They're the ones who are putting the most work in. And, we would put the money in for the editing and the IP and the marketing and covers, and they would be putting the time to write. And for this reason, I chose not to push adherence to dates as a big issue because life happens. And what I learned was when we don't hit the dates, especially toward the latter part of the books 2, book 3, book 4, book 5, then we have lost a significant chunk of marketing opportunity, at least for the way that we did, which was more of a rapid release model. And it messes us up. And I'm not talking minorly. For a recent collaborative effort I've done where we released the first book, I think in September, we slowed down on book like 3 to 4, right? And I would argue that we've lost $30,000 to $40,000 easily because of this, and probably another $20,000 on book 5 because of we didn't hit the dates. It's a lot of money for lack of hitting dates. And so when people a year later or 2 years later, they talk about, well, how successful were you? They don't remember that they missed the dates. What they'll say is, hey, we missed this opportunity for income. And it's like, no, you need to go back and take a look at this and say, hey, this is a potential problem. How are you going to deal with it? And some of the ways to deal with it, quite frankly, is just hold on to the books until they get out. Downside, no income. There's no income coming in because once a person releases the book to your company or to you, and you have to get through the editing and you have to get through the process and then you have to do the release, even if you do that within 2 weeks, you're still at least 60 to 90 days away from any income on that book. So dates are really important. Quality is important. As you have a good editing team, the collaborators might rely more and more on that editing team versus delivering to you quality product. Your costs go up and it takes longer to get the book out. So you need to have something in there related to quality that they're delivering to you. Make sure you create connections to potential authors earlier than what you're ready to release your distributed collaboration environment. I know of one person who had a concept and they delivered it at the first 20 books in Vegas, and it was on fire. It was such a great and impressive idea that she was able to pick up authors like left and right. It was like picking up change off the floors of some place. But in general, you'll need to actually hone your message of what it is that your universe is about to get other authors excited, or to even get on their calendar itself. So be aware of that, of what you need to do. Right now, I'm going to set it up to where I'm going to talk with one of the guys from Draft to Digital. It could be Dan Wood. It could be Kevin Tumlinson. It might be Mark Leslie Lefebvre. Let's see who it is. Hey everybody, this is Michael Anderle, and this is the second part of the discussion for Ali related to distributed collaboration and advanced business models. I have asked Dan Wood, a friend from Draft to Digital, to come on and not only explain a little bit about their company, but also specifically about the Draft to Digital universes that are one of the components of doing this advanced business model. So Dan, thank you very much for coming and taking up your time and giving us a little bit more insight, first on Draft to Digital, who you guys are, and then explicitly the universes product that you guys are in beta with right now.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. We're Draft to Digital. We work with a whole lot of different indie authors to just help them distribute their books everywhere. So we're always looking for different ways, different opportunities to get books all over the world, be it in digital, audio, or print. And so one thing that we've discovered as we've attended conferences over the last few years is that collaboration is becoming such a huge part of success. There's a lot of reasons for that. The indie community is such a great community where people want to help each other and share. Finding readers is difficult, and so sometimes leading readers to other people write books like you or have like a similar viewpoint is a really good thing. The problem we've heard people talk about over the years has been that when you collaborate, someone gets stuck having to do all the accounting, they have to do the taxes, and that's no fun. It's what everyone hates. So we've been working on for a while on some sort of way to make that easier. As a company, we work with authors all over the world, and so we've had to figure out how to pay people in America, in Australia, Africa, just about every country you can think of. We've had to figure out what tax information we need to do. So we're like, we can kind of put that to good use to help people run their business and to collaborate better. Last year when Amazon closed Kindle Worlds, kind of rather quickly, we had a lot of authors reach out to us that wanted to take those books and be able to distribute them and still kind of split royalties between the universe owner and the people who'd written within their world.
Let's take a quick second real quick and inform people what Kindle Worlds was, because it was actually a different component and a different business model than what most people are used to now. So if people didn't have it before then, I mean, from what I remember specifically, so it was an area inside of Amazon that they would reach out to a universe owner. So it might be like Lindsay Baroker is an example of one who had one. Right. And people could write in her universe through the Kindle Worlds, and they had rules and setup of different things that the collaborator had to do. And depending on the collaborator themselves, they might be involved very little all the way to very much in this. And but then Amazon would be the responsible party for actually selling it, setting prices. They would only sell it U.S. because I understand after researching it that they had a kind of an old time accounting system that wasn't. They just really couldn't bring to the present. And so that was also one of the logistical issues that they had. And then frankly, there were a lot of people like myself who I wouldn't do it because it stopped me from setting prices around the world and doing advertising and different things against it. It was just too many constraints.
And that's so powerful, having control over that pricing.
So if you would, so they died. It's like, hey, we're shutting down. You have 30 days or 60 or 90, whatever it is, to get your stuff and figure something out.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a neat idea to being able to open up your world to fan fiction, but where you're also making some money off of it. So it's not like they're just going and writing about your world on Wattpad and no one's really making any money, but maybe Wattpad. Yeah, exactly. It's a really cool idea, both for letting fans write within your world, if I recall correctly, I think once you had a Kindle World, just about anyone could write in it.
I think there was some that you had the ability,
Did
I
they have
think,
some
to
stipulation?
specify how
Okay,
much the rules that they had to live by. Like you
gotcha.
can do this, you can't do that. I don't know how effective it was in implementation. And one of the things that, I met you guys at Neek again this last year, and y'all were announcing the product, and I jumped on it because it was something that, for myself as a large collaboration company, we had seen a lot of the problems related to growth and having to break apart the finances. But the one
Definitely.
or an additional piece that, when in speaking to you guys about it, was that y'all allow me to say who can and can't put product into the universe, and there's a gate there, so I can stop effectively trash from
Right.
going on.
And we thought that was very important because you're putting your name on this product or something about yourself is going to show up. You want to make sure that you control who can and can't write within your universe.
Yeah, exactly. And that's so and just for those that don't know, if you distribute through Draft to Digital, you can certainly go to Amazon, Kobo, Apple, Smash, well, not them obviously, but many different. Yeah, it's like sorry, oops, many potential different distributors, but they're going to take 10%. So that is, so they're not making any money unless you make money. Is generally
Exactly.
how you guys talk about it.
We don't charge anything. Like we don't have any hidden fees or upfront fees. If you never sell a book, we never make any money. If you sell books, we make money. So it really encourages us to go out there and try to get your book sold and more visible on all the retailers.
And it was funny because you and I met my first ever author event back in 2016 for Smarter Artists in Austin. It was in a bowling alley of all places, and I
Yeah.
argued with you at that time. I'm like, guys, 10% is too much, and we've had this ongoing discussion throughout the history of what we're doing. I'm wide now, and so we're testing different wide things. But when it came to Draft to Digital Universes, I'm like, absolutely, 10%. I'm done. You sold. You're welcome to it. I'm happy to it. I see what the costs are going to be on
Yeah.
my side to do that, and it is a foregone conclusion that it is. I don't want to say it's worth more than that because I don't want anyone drafted digital to go. We should really charge 20% for this. No,
I
no,
won't tell my bosses. They'll never see this.
excellent. So
Yeah, it's as with our distribution model, kind of depending on making money when you make money, we have to give you good tools and we have to give you a lot of value to make sure that that percentage is worth it to you. And so we're always building those tools. The collaborative tools, I think, are some of the neatest ones we have coming out now.
now you were telling me a little bit right before we got started. We were having all sorts of Zoom issues, so thankfully
Mhm.
we had time to test. And you were mentioning some of the stuff I wasn't familiar with that you're looking to bring out
Yeah.
in universes. Can you speak to those a little bit?
Yeah, well, let me go. I'm not sure if we've mentioned exactly like what we're doing with our shared universe program. It is very much like the Kindle Worlds, and right now, it's the people who we have allowed into it and have been beta testing with are people who had a Kindle World previously, and so they've been bringing over their books to us. We distribute it wide rather than just going to Amazon because originally Kindle Worlds were just at Amazon. Now you can make those books available everywhere in the world,
But could
including
you?
libraries.
Granted, but if we wanted to be strictly Amazon with KU, can you guys accomplish that?
Not at this time. Right
Okay.
now, the only way to do KU is as an indie author is directly within KDP. We don't know if that'll change or not. It's certainly something we would like to be able to offer
Okay. So
at some
you're
point.
open to it. It's just an
Yeah.
Amazon issue. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, that could just be backends not able to talk to each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
They have different systems for different sizes of publishers for the ways different people go into their systems. So.
okay.
Um, so yeah, so like we've been doing that. We are planning in the near future to open up the shared universes to anyone. Uh, you as the world owner or universe owner comes to us. You say, "I'm interested in setting up this universe." You will have to maintain your own, like make your own legal contract with the authors that you allow to work it within your world. Send us a copy of that so we know what the rules are. Should things go sour in your relationship, you let us know how we should react on our end.
Do y'all
You
have
get
any boilerplate? Is that going to be an option to understand what things we need to be careful about, or?
We don't at this time. We'd originally made one based on the old Amazon contracts, and people were very unhappy with how draconian the original Amazon contracts were about all of that. Because to protect the universe owner, you have to, you kind of have to grab several different rights, to be very thorough. Nearly everyone just started coming up with their own template because they wanted to cater it to the authors they worked with and what they believed about the business.
Okay.
I know several of those authors have shared with their friends because within their genre they kind of know what are good terms for that group, but we don't offer one right now.
Okay, and then how? I would imagine you guys can't say who's in the beta right now. So what you might do is just basically ask around to friends, going, "Hey, does anyone know who's in Drafted Digital's Universes program?"
Yeah, I think different groups, I think 20 books to 50K is a great group to ask within. Ones that are more specific to your genre, ask if anyone's in the program, how it's going for them, how they handled their contract. There's just so many ways to connect now to your author tribe online that those can be the best ways to make connections with them, or conferences. I have the luxury of getting to go to so many conferences, and so
You suffered
it's
in
such a
Bali.
great way to meet people.
Yeah, you suffered in Bali. I think I came out. I'm
Bali
still.
was tough.
It's sacrifice for the company. But your little mobile video thing that you have, I still want one of those.
The DJI Osmo Pocket,
Yeah.
I highly recommend them. Very
Yeah.
cool.
So that's
So
it's
yeah,
like
with the going back to what you the question about the other things we're planning on doing with it,
Mhm.
we really want to take it further and offer things like we know it's really hard for people setting up multi-author box sets, and so that's something we'll be able to build out and handle the taxes and the accounting on, so that instead of one person getting stuck with it, you guys can just kind of tell us these are the books that will go into it. I'm not sure how far we're going to go, like if we're going to compile all those books into the multi-author box set at first. But eventually we'll be doing stuff like that. We're looking at potentials like the ACX model, where if you don't have money up front to pay for something, where if you can find someone willing to do a royalty split with you for a certain amount of time. So let's say that with editing, which tends to be the most expensive part of getting your book done, maybe just doing a royalty split up to a certain point with the editor that they're comfortable with, where it's a little bit of risk on their end, but then they might get paid more if the book does really well.
so some of the different ways of the new collaborations that are being facilitated, or even the new business models that are being facilitated, bringing it back around for the reason for this talk in the first place, through the technologies and through the communication and the collaborations that are happening now. You're just making it easier. People are doing some of these, but who do you get to trust? And
Yeah.
Drafted Digital is a trusted service provider. And so I appreciate you taking the time to jump on here. Are there anything else related to the Universes product or something similar that you might want to discuss real quick to help people?
And one thing I'll definitely mention as far as like who you trust and who you're working with. I'm glad that Drafted Digital, this is our 6th or 7th year as a company. I guess it's the 7th. We started in 2012. We're privately owned, and so again, we're not getting outside funding, or we're not looking to sell the company. It's something that we are very committed to building, like the best publishing platform and easiest for authors to work with. If any of you have an opportunity to go to conferences, odds are you're going to see us there, because we're at nearly every indie-oriented conference. And we're doing more of the industry-facing stuff now as well. And so,
Will I see you in London?
we're not this time. We'll be at Book Expo. Mark Lefebvre
right.
will be at Book Expo. So,
All right, so we'll see Mark at BEA.
yeah, and we'll be at like the RWA National one coming up. We'll be there. Yeah. NINC obviously is one of my favorites, and I've got to talk to you several times at NINC, so I highly recommend NINC if you have a chance to go to it. But yeah, that's what we're focused on. The collaboration part is just like kind of within the DNA of the company, because we've been always working on ways to help authors. And obviously, probably the one thing you never have enough of is time. Like there's just with the pace of writing people are doing these days, and with the marketing and all of the little things, we can save people a ton of time just with our different tools. And because we've worked with authors who are brand new, and we've also worked with veteran authors that are leaving traditional publishing and trying self-publishing for the first time, odds are if you have a question or something, like, we're going to know the answer because we've encountered so many different situations. We have really great email support. We do have a phone number where you can call us if you want to talk to a real person on the phone. Because
So that's not your personal phone number.
no. Oh gosh, can you imagine? Although my new cards do have my cell phone number, I'm kind of regretting that. So
Only kind of.
yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate you taking your time to avail yourself to answer some of these questions. And I hope everybody enjoys a look into some of the new stuff that's coming down the pike with, the concept behind distributed collaborations, where you're moving some of the resources and things that you need to do and the responsibility to publish outside of your company, so that you, and like Dan just said, freeing yourself up from time and risk and effort, because who needs to understand what the taxes are in Zimbabwe? Not me.
Yeah.
So thank you, Dan, and I hope everyone has a wonderful conference here online with Ali.
Thank you.
Bye.